Sarah did not wake up one morning and decide to become noticeable. It happened quietly, the way trouble often does. One season she was just Sarah. Thin legs, flat chest, loud laughter, always running errands barefoot. The next season her body arrived before she did. Hips where there were none, a chest that rose and fell even when she tried to hide it, a softness that made people pause when she passed. At first she didn't understand the pauses. Men began to look at her a second too long, not boldly, not openly, just long enough to feel it. Their eyes followed her and then quickly looked away, like they had been caught stealing something that didn't belong to them. When she greeted them, they cleared their throats before answering, suddenly serious, suddenly distant. Women noticed too, they always did. "Aren't you too young to be filling out like this?" one aunt asked, tugging at Sarah's blouse as if the fabric was the problem. "Sit properly," another woman snapped when Sarah crossed her legs. "Don't walk like that," someone else added, though Sarah didn't know what that meant. She tried to correct herself anyway. She walked slower. She laughed less. She kept her shoulders rounded as if folding herself smaller could return her to the version of her everyone found easier to manage. The girls noticed before she did. They stopped calling her when they were going to the stream, stopped waiting for her on the path to the market. Conversations went quiet when she joined them, then restarted without her. When she asked what was wrong, they shrugged. "Nothing," they said, "but nothing has a sound, and this wasn't it." Compliments came next. They were the strangest part. "You are too fine," women said with tight smiles. "God really took his time with you," men said, laughing like it was a joke. But every compliment felt like a warning wrapped in sugar, like someone pointing at a fragile thing and reminding everyone it could break. One evening, as Sarah passed a group of married women sitting under the mango tree, she heard it for the first time. "She is growing too fast." It wasn't said with anger or kindness. It was said like a conclusion. Sarah did not stop walking. She did not turn, but something inside her shifted. A small, careful thing settled into her chest and stayed there. At home, her mother began watching her more closely. Not with suspicion, never that, but with fear she tried badly to hide. "Cover yourself," her mother said one afternoon, handing her a wrapper even though Sarah was already dressed. "It's hot," Sarah replied. "Still," her mother said, not meeting her eyes. At night, Sarah lay on her mat listening to the sounds of the village, voices fading, radios murmuring, footsteps passing. She thought about how her body now entered a room before her name did, how people reacted to her without speaking, how she had become something to be discussed. She hadn't done anything wrong. She knew that. But knowing didn't bring peace. The unease crept in slowly like harm pretending to be patience. She learned to read faces, to sense when a smile meant friendliness and when it meant something else. She learned that men's discomfort often arrived disguised as judgment, that women's corrections sometimes carried resentment they didn't know how to name. Most of all, she learned this, without anyone saying it directly. If something went wrong, if a home broke, if a man misbehaved, if a story needed a face, they would look at her. Not because she was careless, not because she was wicked, but because her body had begun to speak in ways she hadn't given it permission to. And in this village, being noticed was never neutral. A man would greet her warmly in the morning. By evening, his wife would be watching her like a threat that had learned to walk. "You should dress smaller," one woman told her sternly, though Sarah wore what she had always worn. So she dressed smaller. She wore loose clothes that swallowed her shape. She tied wrappers tighter than necessary. She avoided bright colours. She walked with her head down, eyes on the ground, hoping invisibility would protect her. It didn't. "You are doing too much," someone muttered as she passed. "Does she think she's the only girl here?" Another voice followed. Sarah replayed her steps in her mind. What did I do? How did I walk? Did I laugh too loud? Did I greet someone wrongly? Nothing she changed made any difference. The accusation simply adjusted itself around her. If she dressed neatly, she was proud. If she dressed plainly, she was pretending. If she spoke, she was forward. If she stayed quiet, she was mysterious, and that was worse. One afternoon, she overheard two married women speaking as they sorted vegetables by the roadside. "These young girls don't know their place," one said. "The men see them and forget themselves," the other replied. "That is why they must be careful." Sarah stood frozen behind them, her basket digging into her arm. They must be careful, she thought. Or I must. No one ever asked the men to look away. No one ever suggested they control their thoughts. The responsibility moved easily, comfortably, and landed on her shoulders. At home, her mother grew more worried for her daughter's safety. "This place does not forgive girls like you," her mother said one evening, not looking at her. "Girls like me how?" Sarah asked. Her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Girls people notice," she finally said. That night, Sarah stood in front of the small mirror by the door and studied herself. She pulled her dress down, loosened it, tightened it again, tilted her head, straightened her back, slouched. Each version felt wrong. That was when it settled in her. Heavy and unavoidable, her body was not just hers anymore. It had become a problem the community was trying to solve. And no matter what solution she offered, it would never be enough. Mr. Jonah was not the kind of man people warned you about. He was respected, married, older. The sort of man whose greeting was always returned, whose opinions settled arguments, whose presence made others straighten their backs. He owned land, attended meetings, prayed loudly on Sundays. His wife sold food by the roadside and was known for her kindness. That was why Sarah didn't tense when she met him on the narrow path behind the market. She only stepped aside politely, as she always did. "Sarah," he said, smiling. He had a calm voice, a voice that suggested familiarity, even authority. "Come." She stopped, not because she wanted to, but because saying no to men like Mr. Jonah felt rude, almost rebellious. "I heard you are helping your mother more these days," he said, his eyes moving over her in a way that made her skin tighten. "Good girl." She nodded, waiting for him to move aside. Instead, he stepped closer. The path was quiet, too quiet. The sound of the market faded behind them, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the thud of her own heartbeat. Mr. Jonah did not touch her at first. He didn't need to. His closeness was enough. "You are becoming very beautiful," he said, lowering his voice. "People talk." The words landed heavy. She took a step back. He took one forward, smiling gently as if they were sharing a harmless secret. "You should be careful," he continued. "Men misunderstand things." She felt it then, the shift. Not danger that shouted, but danger that assumed obedience. "I need to go," Sarah said, her voice thin but steady. Mr. Jonah laughed softly. "Why are you shaking? I'm like a father to you." He reached out, not roughly, not hurriedly, and placed his hand on her arm. The touch was light, familiar, claiming. In that moment, Sarah understood something with frightening clarity. He was not afraid. Not of being seen, not of being reported, not of consequences. He leaned in slightly, close enough that she smelled the palm oil on his clothes, close enough that she felt small. "You girls of nowadays don't know how much trouble you cause," he said almost kindly. "A man tries to control himself, but you people—" She pulled her arm away, harder than she meant to. "I have to go," she said again, louder this time. For the briefest second, his face changed. Not anger, not shock, something colder, calculation. Then he stepped back and smiled, as if nothing had happened. "Go," he said, "and greet your mother." Sarah did not wait. She walked quickly at first, then ran. She didn't look back. She didn't scream. She didn't tell anyone. Her chest burned, her legs trembled. But she made it home. That evening, she sat quietly beside her mother, listening to the radio play songs she didn't hear. She washed her arm twice before eating, scrubbing until the skin reddened. Mr. Jonah greeted her normally the next day, loudly, respectfully, in front of people. No one noticed anything wrong. But something had shifted inside Sarah. Something fragile had cracked. She understood now that safety was not about avoiding bad men. It was about surviving good ones who knew they would never be questioned. Sarah did not speak about what happened. She didn't tell anyone, not her mother, not her friends, not the women at the well, not even the girls who used to invite her to play after chores. She stayed quiet, folding herself smaller in every corner she could find, hoping the world might pass her by if she was careful enough. Rumors began like whispers in the breeze, barely audible at first. "She likes attention. She knows what she's doing," someone said. "She laughed with Mr. Jonah yesterday," another added, eyes flicking towards the market path. "Too long." "She thinks she is too fine," a woman muttered while sorting yams, shaking her head. "It's dangerous." The stories grew without her consent, without any evidence, and without anyone needing to know the truth. By the time she realized it, the entire village had already built a new version of her life, a story that painted her as arrogant, flirtatious, and loose. It didn't matter that none of it was true. It didn't matter that she had done nothing. People believed what protected them. Their own comfort was more important than justice, more important than her truth. If blaming Sarah allowed them to sleep at night, gossiping about her accomplishments, her body, her mannerisms, or her supposed temptations became easier than looking inward. The rules did not arrive all at once. They never did. They came gently, wrapped in concern, spoken in voices that sounded reasonable enough to argue with. That was what made them dangerous. "It's better you stay home for now," Mama Grace said one morning, not looking up from the pot she was stirring, "just until things settle." And Sarah stood there with her schoolbooks pressed to her chest. "But my exams—" "You can continue later," her mother replied quickly. "Education will wait. People's mouths won't." That was how school ended, not with a decision, not with an argument, just with a sentence that closed a door. Staying indoors became normal. At first, it was only during busy hours. Then it was most of the day. Then it was whenever voices gathered outside. Sarah learned the sound of footsteps, the rhythm of the village from behind walls. "Don't go to the meeting," her mother said. "Don't attend that naming ceremony. Stay back. Let them forget you." Each instruction sounded like care. Each one took something away. Her world narrowed. Mornings blurred into afternoons, afternoons into evenings. She cooked, cleaned, folded clothes, and waited. Her body, once accused of causing trouble, was now hidden like a secret that embarrassed everyone. And still nothing changed. The man walked freely. Mr. Jonah attended meetings. He laughed loudly. He greeted elders with confidence. His wife smiled at customers. Unaware or unwilling to know, no one watched his steps, no one advised him to be careful, no one told him to stay indoors. Sarah saw him pass the house one afternoon, his voice carrying easily down the road. He did not lower it, he did not hurry. Something tight twisted in her chest. She was the one locked away. She was the one removed from school. She was the one made smaller. One evening, unable to contain it, she asked, "Why am I the one hiding?" Her mother flinched. "Because you are the one they talk about." Sarah swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything." "I know," her mother said quickly, too quickly. "They said your beauty is a curse to them. This is a mother, protecting her child, the only way she can." Her mother added. The rage crept in quietly. It wasn't loud or explosive, it settled deep, heavy and hot. Sarah felt it when she stared out the window, when she listened to the village continue without her, when she realized that protection, in this place, looked exactly like punishment. She was being disciplined for surviving. Days passed, weeks. The rules remained. Her life kept shrinking, folding in on itself until she barely recognized it. And the man? He continued freely. The suggestion came quietly, the way decisions about girls always did. Not in Sarah's presence, not as a question. It surfaced in corners between women grinding pepper, between elders after meetings, in low voices that carried certainty. "This thing is dragging," someone said. "There is a simple solution," another replied. "Let her marry quickly." By the time the words reached Sarah, they had already hardened into agreement. Her mother did not introduce it as an idea. She presented it as a conclusion. "They are saying marriage will settle everything," she said one evening, her voice careful, tired. "Once you are in a man's house, people will rest." Sarah stared at her. Which man? There was no answer. No name, no proposal, no knocking on the door, no visit from a family bearing gifts, nothing that looked like choice or desire or even courtesy. Just urgency. "This is not about love," her mother continued softly. "It's about peace." Peace for who? Sarah wanted to ask, but the answer was already clear. Marriage, she realized, was being used like a cover. A way to close the matter without addressing it, a way to move her body from one place to another so the village could breathe easier. She thought of school, of the life she had paused, of the rules that had already taken so much from her. Now even her future was being negotiated without her presence. "Do I get to say no?" she asked quietly. Her mother's silence was answer enough. The man came 2 days later, older than Sarah, known, respectable. He did not look at her directly. He spoke to her mother, to the elders, to the air around the room. Sarah sat nearby, listening to her life being rearranged like furniture. No one asked what she wanted. No one asked if she was ready. No one mentioned love. Love was unnecessary. That night, lying awake, Sarah understood the truth clearly for the first time. She was not being saved. She was being hidden. Hidden in a marriage so the village would stop talking. Hidden behind a husband's name so blame could be reassigned. Hidden in a new house where her silence would be expected and enforced. Marriage was not a beginning. It was damage control. And as sleep finally took her, one thought settled heavily in her chest. If this was what protection looked like, she wondered what survival would cost next. Marriage did not fix Sarah. It finished her, carefully, quietly, with witnesses smiling. What dignity was taken from her in the village square was not returned at the altar. It was only transferred, signed over, handed to a man who believed love meant possession and protection meant control. Her husband never beat her. That would have been too obvious, too honest. Instead, he punished her beauty. He resented it the way insecure men resent fire, because it attracts attention even when it is doing nothing at all. "You like eyes on you," he would say when men glanced her way. "You enjoy trouble," when she spoke confidently. "Lower your voice," when she laughed. "Sit properly," when she crossed her legs. Her body became a liability she had to apologize for daily. If she dressed well, she was accused of disrespect. If she dressed poorly, she was accused of hiding something dangerous. If she spoke, she was rude. If she kept quiet, she was proud. There was no version of Sarah that was innocent. He controlled where she went. He controlled who she spoke to. He controlled when she left the house and how long she stayed. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because something might happen. Fear was dressed up as love. Jealousy was renamed protection. Ownership was called marriage. Meanwhile, the village slept better. Women said, "At least she's settled now." Men said, "Marriage will humble her." Elders said nothing because silence had worked before. The whispers stopped. The tension eased. The village breathed easier. The problem had been handled. No one asked what it cost her. No one noticed that Sarah stopped dreaming, that her eyes dulled, that her laughter no longer reached her mouth. Marriage did not save her. It simply moved her suffering indoors, where it could no longer embarrass anyone. And Sarah learned the cruelest truth yet. Sometimes society doesn't want a woman healed. It just wants her contained. Time finally gave the village what it wanted. Sarah grew older. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough for the stairs to stop, enough for her name to lose urgency, enough for her body to no longer feel like a community discussion. By their standards, she was no longer dangerous. She became invisible, and for a while, invisibility felt like rest. But damage does not disappear when attention does. It reveals itself. Fear followed her into every room, not loud fear, quiet fear, the kind that makes you sit with your back to the wall, the kind that listens before it speaks, the kind that scans faces for danger even in safety. Silence had become her first language. She spoke only when necessary, explained herself too much, smiled to soften sentences that didn't need softening. Years of being misunderstood had trained her to disappear mid-conversation. Worst of all, she felt disconnected from herself. She couldn't remember when she last made a choice without asking, "Is this allowed?" She didn't know what she liked, only what was acceptable. Her desires felt foreign, like things that belonged to someone else. The girl who once lived freely in her body was gone. And one day, it finally became clear. They hadn't destroyed her body. Her body survived the stairs, the rules, the marriage, the years. What they destroyed was her sense of safety, the belief that the world could hold her without punishment. And without safety, a woman may keep living. But she never fully returns to herself. Years passed, quiet, careful years. Sarah never spoke of the village, never spoke of Mr. Jonah, never spoke of the rules, the marriage, the whispers. Not until her daughter came of age, the age when eyes lingered too long, when voices offered advice too sharp, when safety felt negotiable. One evening they sat together on the porch, the sun fading behind the trees. Her daughter asked why people sometimes looked differently at girls like her, why women whispered, why men smiled strangely. Sarah took a deep breath. She had carried the story in silence for decades. Now she let it out softly, firmly, without apology. "If they ever say your beauty is a problem," she said, "know this, the problem is never the girl." Her daughter listened, eyes wide, taking in the weight of what she said. Sarah held her hand, steady and warm. She wanted her daughter to walk into the world without learning the same lessons she had. "They didn't hate me because I was proud," Sarah said, voice steady. "They hated me because every man wanted me, and every woman feared what that meant." For the first time in decades, she exhaled fully, as if letting the story leave her body could lighten it. The truth was no longer theirs to tell. It belonged to her. And in that ownership, Sarah finally felt a measure of freedom.